Hi everyone, welcome to my presentation. My name is Yangmingting Fang. I am a doctoral student at the University of Alabama in Tuscaloosa. Today, I am going to talk about performance anxiety. This research primarily explores the cause and the nature of performance anxiety to provide a comprehensive understanding of it, as well as the strategies to cope with the anxiety.
Here is an outline of my presentation. There are three major parts there: the causes and effects of performance anxiety, understanding the anxiety, and the strategies. I hope you enjoy it. First, what is performance anxiety? Another common name for performance anxiety is stage fright. In general, it refers to the fear that may be aroused before a live performance, which will result in physical and psychological symptoms. For instance, trembling hands and knees, hyperventilation, which means breathing too quickly, also sweaty hands or cold hands, and the increase in heart rate and the blood pressure, which will cause feeling of dizziness or cause actual heartbeat irregularities and increase muscle tension. For psychological symptoms, self-doubt is a usual one. Taking myself as an example, I would often doubt myself before the performance. I might worry about those technical demanding sections and the memory slips in those tricky spots, no matter how well prepared I was for the performance. Narrowing of attention is another common symptom. It is very hard for the performer to focus on the performance when they are busy questioning themselves, being unconfident of their hard work and being unsure of what will happen next, which thereby might lead to difficulty of planning ahead during the performance. The feeling of such anxiety is usual because performance in front of audience is already a demanding task that requires adequate preparation prior to it, as well as a high degree of concentration during the performance. In fact, the performer needs a certain level of anxiety because reasonable amount of nervousness is essential to a good performance. However, it is necessary for the performer to face the physical and the psychological arousals with positive attitude and transform into motivations because the tension needed for a good performance is not anxiety, but a moderate state of excitement. If the performer is not handling well, those symptoms will negatively affect their performance. Now let's look at some potential side effects. First, the task irrelevant cues occurred on head will cause distraction from the performance. And when the performer starts to worry about memory slips, technique issues, they tend not to listen and become less expressive as they worry too much about the unpredictable mistakes instead of focusing on enjoyment of the music. And of course, when one stops listening and stops connecting ear, mind, and hands during the performance, it will lead to reliance on muscle memory. In other words, we call it autopilot mode on hand, which will cause not only less musicality, but more memory slips. When we experience memory slips under the situation of autopilot mode, it is also much harder to get back on track. Another common effect of performance anxiety is the fluctuations in tempo. The performer usually tends to start the piece too fast, sometimes even at an unmanageable tempo. Also, overthinking small mistakes. A small memory slip or even one wrong note will stick to head and upset the performer when they are under too much anxiety. Such task-irrelevant cues of mind will unfortunately cause more mistakes. And if they don't confront the anxiety promptly and don't have good performance as expected, it is likely for the avoidance cycle to occur, according to Dr. Sandra Harris, a clinical psychologist at California State University. The cycle starts with fear to the incoming performance, avoidance to limited experience, limited success, feelings of inadequacy afterwards, and goes back to fear. In order for us musicians to overcome performance anxiety, it is necessary to understand it. In the next section, what I would like to explore first is where does the anxiety come from? According to the existing studies of music major students and the professional musicians, researchers have identified several possible threats of the anxiety. For instance, unsatisfactory acoustics, unfamiliarity of the performing space, concerns about the performance quality, worries about memory slips, and worries about technical problem of the piece. Potential impact of the performance also matters. Is it an important degree recital, an audition? Is it your first paid performance, or will the performance on that day mean a lot to your career? The potential impact of the performance will clearly determine the anxiety level. The audience might also affect the performer. It is more likely for the performer to get nervous when there are critical listeners sitting in the audience, such as colleagues, teachers, and the other professionals in the field. Therefore, sometimes it is relatively relaxed to perform in front of a group of people, but it's very scary to play in front of just two or three colleagues or play in front of a few professors for jury. Because we value their opinions and we care about how they look at us, we tend to feel more threatening when performing in front of them. Significance of music to the performer will affect the anxiety level as well. For those who have multiple identities, who treat music as one of many hobbies in life, they are usually more relaxed when performing because they are simply sharing what they love and enjoy the performance opportunity. However, for those professional performers who consider music as the one and only focus of their lives, they will definitely put more pressure on themselves. After familiarizing ourselves with some possible threats that might lead to anxiety of a performance, next, I want to explore and discuss the nature of the anxiety. As we know, performance anxiety does not limit to musicians. It also occurs in situations such as exam taking and public speaking. The keyword for stage fright under almost all situations is fear. Therefore, researchers in other fields also help musicians better understand performance anxiety. The research titled Three-Factor Theory conducted by Dr. Dudley D. Kahn was originally done for performance anxiety in public speaking. Considering the similarities between public speakers and musicians that both groups frequently need to perform in front of a large group of audience, I found that this research brings many inspirations to musicians as well. According to Dr. Khan, there are three principal components of emotional results: behavioral, physiological, and cognitive. The definition of the first one, behavioral, is that a living organism's overt response to a stimulus. In other words, it refers to the direct response to a stimulus, and such stimulus does not necessarily involve cognitive processes. The behavioral factor includes two types. One type will avoid performing in front of audience in the first place. They may just reject the to-performance invitation, or for those fearful students, they will just withdraw the course to avoid such situation. Another type is overt manifestations, which can also be referred to as stage fright symptoms and falls into at least three categories. The fidgetiness, that includes movements such as shuffling feet and swinging arms. The inhibition, which means actions taken to repress tensions such as trembling and the expressionless face. And the third one, autonomia. This refers to autonomic imbalance that caused by anxiety, like heavy breathing, blushing, or swallowing. The next factor is physiological, which indicates the bodily changes, excitations, or arousal. The physiological arousal is considered unconditional, and the occurrence of such does not necessarily involve the cognitive process either. As I mentioned a little bit in the previous part of the presentation, the indicators of physiological arousal usually include elevated heart rates, blood pressure, and increased sweating. Between the factors of behavioral and physiological, there is no direct relationship, which also means that there is no one-to-one relationship between a particular state of arousal and the behaviors. And the third one is cognitive. It is the conscious experience of the behavioral or physiological changes that associated with emotions. Basically, cognitive component serves to evaluate the emotions in behavior and the physiological arousal. To my understanding, the cognitive one is the most important factor among those three, since it will help us to reduce the anxiety from behaviors or arousals if we manage it well. In general, the awareness of behaviors or physiological changes can initiate cognitive operations, which might affect changes in subsequent behavior or physiological arousal. According to Dr. Kahn, the cognitive component of emotion is a modifier or a corrective that, within limits, controls and more basic emotion responsiveness governed by unlearned and learned stimulus response connections. This research shows that The three components are interdependent mechanisms. They control different aspects of an emotional experience, and the emotion is the result of their interaction. For instance, if the stimulus event only evokes a behavior arousal, it is unlikely for the performer to experience stage fright. If that stimulus event evokes both behavior and the physiological arousal, the performer might experience stage fright. Stimulus events that only evokes arousal will initiate cognitive operations that provide the individuals with explanations of the experience. Therefore, if the individual is certain that the responses are inappropriate, they can change their behavior or arousal to shift to an ideal mindset. Overall, this research is a great news for performers because it proves that it's never too late for performer to find ways to adjust the anxiety after it occurs, even when they're experiencing it right before the performance. And the following part of my presentation will focus on the strategies for coping with the anxiety. I will first introduce the four performance stages summed up by Dr. Sandra Harris, which provide advice to help musicians better prepare for the incoming performances. Those are preparation, confrontation, which refers to the period shortly before the performance, then during the performance, and after the performance. Now let's look at what we can do in each period. During the preparation period, as the name suggests, the performer should practice, train skills, and build confidence for the incoming performance. Getting physically ready is also very important. Eat well, rest well. Relaxation exercise is helpful too. The confrontation is before the performance, usually at backstage. It is also when performance anxiety usually occurs. Therefore, the performer needs to plan some relaxation strategies beforehand and now apply those methods to confront the anxiety. During the performance, there are two keywords for the performer: relaxation and encouragement. Before starting each piece, take a good breath to calm down and keep breathing regularly during the performance to help body stay relaxed. And then always enjoy the good moment of the performance. Send positive signals, treat the arousals correctly, and do not get frustrated by small mistakes. The performer's internal dialogue or inner speech plays an important part to the performance. A calm musician can usually present a successful performance as they expected because they are able to acknowledge the task irrelevant cues or negative thoughts or mind, and then they will take actions immediately to dismiss them to avoid getting distracted from the work in hand. Even arousals like trembling, sweating occur. Don't be scared. Just treat them as a good sign and keep sending positive signals to yourself because feelings are actually controlled by how we think about the event. And always keep in mind a certain amount of anxiety is needed for the performance. The last stage is after the performance. In this stage, of course, it is okay to be critical, but most importantly, reinforce the success, acknowledge the hard work, and then get ready to the next preparation period. As I just mentioned, It is crucial to plan some strategies ahead to manage the anxiety before and during the performance. And in my next section, I will talk about the strategies to cope with the anxiety. If the situation allows, we can choose to get professional training or treatment to help us reduce the anxiety. For instance, we can find nearby physical therapists and enrolling in those professional relaxation therapy courses. Lessons in Alexander technique are popular too. The Alexander technique was designed to help people learn how to release tension and rediscover better balance mentally and physically. During the lessons, the teacher uses hands together with verbal explanation to guide the students through everyday movement, such as sitting, standing, walking, bending, and lying down. Another very effective method is biofeedback. This is the one that has been proved very helpful, especially with problems of excessive muscle tension. This is a technique used for training in self-control over physical functions. During the biofeedback treatment, there will be electrodes attached over the various muscle groups, and the activity of the disturbed muscle will be recorded electrically. Then the muscle activity can be transformed into a visual or auditory signal that can be perceived by the subject. This way, the musician is able to see or hear the high tension in the muscle and learn to regulate it promptly when the tension occurs. Biofeedback has been considered very successful, and some institutions have incorporated such methods with their programs to help students. For instance, according to Dr. Robert Nidifer and Dr. Nancy Hessler, Eastman School of Music has programs designed to help students who are suffering from performance anxiety. Prior to the biofeedback therapy, students are asked to do the test of attentional and the interpersonal style questionnaire, which is used to measure the characteristics of interpersonal style and the attentional skill. After they pre-test students with the questionnaire, they will have specific self-treatment sessions for them. They have a biofeedback laboratory where a technician hooked students up to the equipment to measure the level of muscle tension. Additionally, the programs combine training in relaxation and the development of positive attitudes and images to further assist the students. I think they are very fortunate to have those professional involved programs to guide them through the process of coping with the performance anxiety. That way, the students will not just simply practice more and more to make themselves less nervous. The methods mentioned above are surely ideal and effective because of the involvement of professionals, but it might not be practical for all of us. Fortunately, there are also a lot of things we can do on our own to ease the anxiety and get ready for the performance. Relaxation training is a basic component of many intervention strategies, and the relaxation exercises are among the easiest and the most effective ones to do by ourselves because we won't need to worry about getting injured because of wrong postures. Basically, just breathing and relaxing. Here are some of my favorite ones that I highly recommend to you. The first one is 478 breathing technique. This one is very simple. Breathe in through nose for 4 seconds. Hold breath for 7 seconds. And then breathe out through mouth for 8 seconds. This one is a must-have exercise for me to do now before every performance, and it always works great. In my opinion, the 478 breathing technique is one of the best relaxation techniques to do when you are waiting at the backstage before the performance because it only takes such short time. I would usually repeat for 3 or 4 times. It helps me to calm down and reduce the performance anxiety. Breathing meditation is also a good exercise to help with relaxation. Two things to remember before you begin. First, the environment should be peaceful and quiet. Second, wear comfortable clothes. Close your eyes and sit in a comfortable position. You should also decide how long you are going to meditate. Beginners are usually suggested to start with short sessions of 3 to 5 minutes. After all the preparations, we may start. Basically, we need to follow our breathing and trace its route in this process. Take a deep breath first, then slowly inhale, expand the belly, and slowly exhale, contract the belly. Try to only focus on your breathing in this process. You may even pick any spot above your navel and concentrate on that spot with your mind. The purpose of this basic meditation technique is not only to help with relaxation, it also trains attention and awareness, and its purpose is to regulate the negative thoughts and the feelings of mind, which are all important factors for musicians to present a successful performance. The last one I'm going to introduce today is Jacobson's progressive muscle relaxation exercise. This method teaches relaxation as a skill in muscular control, and according to the researchers, it will have a secondary effect on the brain through the reduction of sensory inputs. The suggesting posture is lying down so that you can get fully relaxed, but sitting comfortably also works. For this exercise, we basically progressively tense and release each part of our body from face muscles to toes. For instance, tense the eyebrow, breathe in for 3 seconds, hold the breath for 3 seconds, and then breathe out. And we simply just repeat the same steps for every part of the muscle. Here I attached a few examples for better explaining this exercise to those who are not familiar with this before. The above one indicates the muscles that needed to be involved in this exercise, and the bottom one has detailed instructions on it. This exercise is favored by clinical psychologists, and I was actually taught by my teacher when I was working on Chopin's barcarolle for my first DMA recital. My teacher was not happy with it because I sounded very tensed up throughout the piece, which was completely opposite with the relaxing and the enjoyable atmosphere that I should make for this piece. Then she guided me to do my first ever progressive muscle relaxation exercise in my lifetime, and then let me play again after I finish. I didn't have much expectation, but seriously, the change of the sound I made was transformative. Like suddenly I made a better sound, but which with much less effort. Since then, I started to do such exercise regularly to help myself get familiar with that ideal state of my muscle. If you haven't done so before, I would highly recommend to spend a bit of time for relaxation exercise every day, even just for a few minutes, and it can be any kind. Yoga is a great one too. The purpose of having relaxation exercise regularly is to get your body familiar to a relaxed status so that when you get nervous during the performance, your body will not get tensed up. A relaxed body will help tremendously with reducing the performance anxiety. Besides relaxation exercise, I also list the strategies provided by music teachers. Solid preparation, of course. Slow practice is encouraged, and you might also try to practice with eyes closed, which will help to improve accuracy and feel more secured and confident. Know your music well and incorporate of piano practice, such as score study and mental practice. It is necessary to memorize away from the piano in order to familiarize yourself with the structure and the harmonies of the piece. During the practice session, it is necessary to concentrate on small sections to really focus on and get the most out of the practice. One thing to avoid is keep running through the whole piece from the beginning to the end again and again. Also, perform frequently prior to the official big performance is encouraged, and it will help a lot to ease the anxiety. Play for your friend or even perform at home for your family. Record and videotape the practice session is also helpful because you can listen back and be your own teacher. Keep a healthy mindset, feel support from the audience, and focus on the enjoyment of music. What made me want to present on performance anxiety is because it is a common challenge for musicians, especially for collegiate music majors. Therefore, it is important to effectively manage and confront the anxiety to minimize the side effects of performance anxiety so that we all can achieve a high quality performance that more accurately represents the level of preparation, skill, and talent. Please feel free to contact me if you have any thought or comment about my presentation. Any suggestion is appreciated. Thank you so much for listening.